Up and at 'em, everyone. Thank you for joining us right here on a Wake Up Worcester. And you know Worcester's Got Talent. We're going to tell you all about one of the great talent competitions that's going on right now. Pam Richards will be with us. Also, we'll be talking with the gang from Jesse Burkett Little League. They're in action as well. We'll bring you up to date on that. Our first guest this morning is State Senator Steve Brewer. And Senator Brewer, thank you for coming by.
Good morning, Hank. Good to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about the RTA, about regionalism. Here in Worcester, we've been reading the Telegram and Gazette about the WRTA, the hits that they have been taking. Barry, Hubbardston, New Braintree, some of the areas that you cover. What's happening in those areas when it comes to the Regional Transportation Authority?
Well, whenever bus service is cut for a community, it's a significant impact. There are people that ride those buses that depend on those buses for their livelihood. They may depend on them to get to their doctor's appointments, to get to the hospitals for their treatments. In a rural area, it's a particularly egregious situation. Now, with the cost of fuel that had been escalating, there was very grim times last year. The Worcester Regional Transit Authority has worked very, very hard to find the best efficiencies and the best economies of scale that they possibly can. But it's very difficult when your number one item is your cost of fuel, quite honestly, and materials for your transportation, insurance, healthcare benefits for your employees. That being said, the fiscal year coming up for the WRTA has about $225,000 increase over the previous fiscal year. Some of the support from the federal stimulus package will help on their capital needs, which is very, very important.
Well, I guess I'm lost a little bit here. Then, if we're increasing it by $225,000, we're getting federal stimulus money, and why are we reading constantly about the cuts? It seems as if we should be increasing service.
Well, I think some of those cuts have been reconsidered during the last few weeks. Number one, but again, $200,000 on an $8.6 million budget is not that much. And with skyrocketing costs that happen, it still remains as an eternal challenge to try to squeeze that apple as much as you possibly can. I do think that they do a fine job. Number one, they also have increased technology for scheduling. And when we talk about increasing the efficiencies, if at all possible, I think it's really important that we don't run empty buses if we possibly can, and to find the best places, the best times to run your buses. That's I'm not going to micromanage WRTA, but I've been very encouraged by the advisory board's work, City Manager Michael Bryan's work, and the people who run the WRTA. And my letters and calls and complaints are down significantly from where they were a year ago. And sometimes you measure the efficiencies of these things in that regard. But it is a lifeline for rural people to have that. That is one of the few positive line items throughout our state budget system. We're looking at enormous cuts in every line item, virtually. Very, very few line items are withheld from the scrutiny and the cutbacks. When you have a $3.5 billion delta between what is expected and what is real in our budget, out of a $28 billion state budget, there are going to, when you talk about the potential closings of the Templeton Developmental Center, the Glavin Center, Munson Developmental Center, the closure of the Winchendon District Court, the closure of the Southbridge Registry, Springfield Eastfield Mall Registry, the registrar is going to close 11 registries. And this will permeate through all aspects of our lives. I think every single citizen of Massachusetts, from the very old to the very young, will feel the downsizing of government over the next 18 months.
Oh, the lines are going to be out the door at the register. The lines already are. Do you feel that the legislature, Steve, has made the cuts that are necessary? We're paying more for our beer and wine on the weekend. That just went up to 6.25%. The sales tax. Did you make the cuts before you kind of came after the wallets?
Well, I believe that we have stayed on top of this. It's not pleasant. Make no mistake about it. Legislators are not happy when they have to do these things, especially raising money or cutting services. We cannot carry over debt from one fiscal year to the next. We are prohibited by the Constitution from doing that. And thank God that we are, quite honestly, because we're not just printing money like they are at the Bureau of Engraving in Washington and saddling future generations with debt that we don't even know will be the consequences of that. So we have to deal the hand that has dealt with us. We revisited our budget 5 times and cut as the fiscal year progressed. But we ate into our rainy day, our reserve accounts, and we won't have that opportunity next year. The rainy day accounts will not be restored. The federal stimulus money over the next 18 months. Right now we haven't heard a lot from higher education because we were required from federal stimulus money to backfill some of that. But we've urged presidents of state and community colleges not to bake into their operational budget those kind of funds because they will not be forthcoming from the legislature 2 years out when the federal money dries up. The transportation funding that we have seen so much around our area. So we will rethink how government serves its citizenry. But truthfully, sooner or later, these accounts do reach into your own front yard.
You cover a lot of small towns. You also, maybe this is the place to start with this question, you also, the Quabbin School District is in your district.
Yes.
They are going to have a superintendent with the North Middlesex. I don't know if that is a done deal yet, but there has been talk about that Maureen Marshall, the superintendent of the North Middlesex District, would also be the superintendent of Quabbin. You think that is the wave of the future, this consolidation?
It is, but it needs to be done very logically. And one area that the public will not support is losing the territorial integrity of their school. The gold and green of Tantascwa, or the burgundy and white of Quabog, or the blue and gold of Quabbin, or the orange and black of David Prouty. Those integrity, be true to your school. That remains in the best educational institutions do not get too big. However, sharing of administrative functions. Let me give you an example. In the state of Maryland, which is 5.9 million people, Massachusetts 6.4 million, so roughly the same amount. The state of Maryland has 28 school districts for the whole state. Commonwealth of Massachusetts has 328 school districts. Everyone but the superintendent, deputy superintendent for curriculum, and if we can intelligently share resources, and I think that the North Middlesex region and the Quabbin regionals experiment, if it does happen, and I'm not so sure all the paint is dry on that yet. It's a one-year experiment. Will act as a template, quite honestly, for further exploration of regionalism of these things. If you can maintain the high standards of education for our students and save the taxpayers hard-earned money, then we ought to try to be brave and think out of the box and do these things.
Does it have to be regionalism also, though, because you cover a lot of small towns, when it comes to the volunteer fire departments, one chief, 3 or 4 towns, police? I mean, can it expand to all of that?
Well, ironically, the fire service has been regionalized for 50 or 60 years. It's called mutual aid. They deploy their equipment. For example, one town can have a $700,000 aerial ladder, and if there's a major conflagration in the next town over, they share that. Athol saved Barry's Town Hall along with Holden back in 1981. And every town doesn't have to have an $800,000 or $900,000 aerial ladder. So that is being done. Lockup facilities are important. Trash disposal, collection, Board of Health examiners, inspectional services. There are many ways. The Franklin County Regional Council of Governments has done that up in Franklin County because it's a very rural area and their needs are there. So, but what we need to do is make sure that we don't become territorial and not say the same old